Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon session of the BOCC. Today we have, well, we're missing Commissioner Weber. I think he's out for this one. But we have Cowlitz chaplaincy in, and I'll just turn it over to Gina.
Thank you. I'm just going to do take a brief minute here. So I'm Gina James, Cowlitz County Health and Human Services. So I've been speaking with Kalei Lefebvre with the Cowlitz chaplaincy and just learning more about what they do for the community and kind of what some of their needs are. And through some of that discussion, we thought it might be a good opportunity to come and share that information with the board and the public who may be listening or coming today. So I will invite Kalei Lefebvre up and start us off with learning some more about the chaplaincy.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Dahl.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Kelly, for your assistance. Thank you, Commissioner Dahl and Commissioner Mortensen. My name is Kalei Lefebvre, and I am honored to be here today. It has been a long journey on this project, almost a year. And it's very important for me to share with you my experience as an employee at the chaplaincy, as well as a past emergency medical technician. And then we're going to show you the actual building that we are hoping to be our HQ building in the near future. I am the Community Outreach Director of the chaplaincy, and I've been there for about a year and a half. And my role is to educate the community and yourselves of how impactful and beneficial the chaplaincy is to all of our county and our community. I was an EMT in the late 80s, and in the first 8 weeks of being an EMT, we had 6 fatalities. At the time, the chaplains were there to help us through that trauma. And had it not been for those chaplains to help us through these tragedies, we couldn't have been able to get up another day and do our best for our community. And I was so thankful for them then. And I was very thankful that they considered bringing me on a year and a half ago. And it has been just an honor to do so. What I have found is that the chaplains not only are important now because I'm working so closely with them. So this dream of getting a new HQ building didn't just start a year ago. It started in the late 80s when I knew that they were so beneficial to all first responders to help serve our community. I have a presentation to show you regarding the building that we are looking at on 7th Avenue. A friend of mine that I was talking to, I was sharing with her that our chaplains, our volunteer chaplains, our goal is to respond within 15 minutes, which our executive director will share with you here soon. But we did have no place for our chaplains to go when they were on call. So there were people that had bedrooms in their homes that would let them use and borrow as needed. And at this time, the Pucci family has allowed us to use their loft, which will soon be turned into a B&B, so that is not a forever solution. The particular building that we're looking at, my friend had mentioned to me, hey, I know that you had talked about your chaplains needing a place. How about a building that we are selling? And I think that's going to come up here in just a second on the screen. It's a home and a building on 7th Avenue that could be used for multiple purposes, which you'll hear from our executive director as well as Chaplain Doug Fields on the programs that we hope to put through this particular building. It is on 7th Avenue. It is perfect for a facility to house the chaplains upstairs in the bedrooms, in the living quarters. And feel free to pan through the photos if you'd like. There's also 2 rooms downstairs that we can use for training rooms. And it could also be used as our offices. This happens to be very close to the DOC building, as well as other departments that we work very closely with in the community. I just heard from the owner this morning and mentioned that if in fact you choose to help us fund this project, that if there was an interim time of finalizing the numbers, et cetera, that they would be willing to allow us to move into the facility during that process as soon as possible. And they've been just a joy to work with. This is the upstairs facility that could be used for the housing aspect for the chaplains. It's a beautiful kitchen. It has several bedrooms. It finally shows true respect to our chaplains that volunteer their time and serve this community to give them a place to go because they also have to deal with tragedy. And this is just a better place than just renting somebody's bedroom out of their home. Downstairs, there's 2 private meeting spaces that we are hoping to utilize and fill through programs that we would like to continue as well as launch that impacts all sectors of our county: children, young adults, families, seniors. And they do not have to necessarily be religious to get services and love and passion from our chaplains. I believe there's a couple of pictures of the banquet spaces downstairs. Also, as you'll see, as Kelly's going through the slides, this is one of them here. The goal is to be able to support all sectors of our community, and as Chaplain Doug Fields will talk about, is also impacting chaplains from other areas. We are one of the only organizations and nonprofits in the country that has so many volunteer chaplains that serves such a high number of people in our county. So that is those are the pictures of the building that we feel we've traveled through. We feel it's perfect. Not only will we be asking for you to purchase the building and possibly lease it to us for $1 a year, or purchase the building and tell us what you would need from us to lease it. The other thing I'd like to talk to you about is the Cowlitz Chaplaincy only receives funding from individuals and businesses. We do not receive any funding from federal, state, county, or city. It is all on our givers. So we have an operational support annual budget that we utilize to help with our vehicles, our printer lease, our phone. So not only are we asking for you to possibly purchase this building as a county building, but to assist us with our annual operational funding. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you our Executive Director, Paul Bricknell.
Thank you, Calais. Appreciate that. And commissioners, thanks for sharing your afternoon with us. I have had the chance to share with you a little bit about the chaplaincy in years past, and many of you are aware of what we do. But I want to share with you just a little bit about how one evening impacted our entire community and the role that the chaplaincy played in. In April of 2019, Justin DeRozier was shot and killed. I received a phone call at 10 p.m. that night that the incident had began. And that's when our chaplains, all of our chaplains, were able to be placed strategically at the event command center, at Cowlitz 911, at District 5 Fire, Kalama Police, and to be available to show support and carry the burden that our community and our responders carried that night going into the next day. Little did I know, being an officer involved shooting like this was, that things were just starting. I got a call from our board of directors president, Lieutenant Daryl Herrera, who mentioned things are just beginning. For the next 2 weeks, our chaplains were able to lead and organize defusings and debriefings with a number of responders that were involved that night. We spent 168 hours in those next several weeks providing counseling and CISM support for everyone who needed that, including Justin's team, all those that were present that evening, spouses, and small groups of individuals. It was one of the things that I quickly learned, that the Cowlitz Chaplaincy is one of the many gyms in our community, and our role has a specific niche of supporting and caring for first responders so that they can have a long, healthy career, so that when they carry burdens like they do, they're able to shoulder those burdens with the chaplains in a healthy manner so that they can go home and be present with their families. We not only assist responders, but we also assist their families. Many of our chaplains have conversations that start with the first responder, but also carries over to the home. And that's one of our mission is to support the first responder and their families. And that's what we've been doing for 40 years since when Sheriff Les Nelson decided that after the Mount St. Helens erupted, that it was time. It was time to provide some support for the deputies. And so in 1983, the Cowlitz Chaplaincy officially became a nonprofit. And since then, we have now are serving those in the greater community. From Toodle Fire all the way down to Woodland Police, everyone in between all the departments receive our services. And the way things have shaken out over the past 5 years. When I started in 2018, our chaplains went on approximately 202 calls, which was the most that we had seen before. Last year, we went on 278 calls. Commissioners, last year alone, all of Cowlitz County first responders went on approximately 110,000 call-outs. And we went on 278 of the most critical ones. And that may not seem like a lot, but it actually adds up quite a bit. See, every one of us, when we go on a call-out, we have an expectation of what that call-out will look like. But when something happens outside of our expected, that's when those things leave stress injuries. And that's where the chaplaincy can play a huge role in our support for first responders and for their families. And so there's a number of things that we are involved in that Doug's going to share in just a few minutes. But I'll just point out our goal as a chaplain is to be on scene in 15 minutes, which plays a huge critical role to carry the burden for first responders as they are taking care of the patient so that we can assist the moms and the dads and the grandmas and the grandpas and the kids who are watching things unfold in front of them. You see, paramedics are trained to treat the patient, but chaplains are trained to carry the emotional stress involved in that scene. And so that's what we do. We lighten the burden so that paramedics and firefighters and police can take care of the scene, and we can carry the load of those who are watching. And so that's our niche. It's a beautiful thing that we've been able to do and to be there for those families that are in time of need. And so I'd like to invite Doug to come up, and he's going to share a little bit about kind of the ins and outs of what we do and our role as how we serve our community.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, commissioners. As far as, I think Paul made it pretty clear that, the chaplains provide psychological, emotional, and spiritual first aid to all of our responders, to people in the community. And we do that in many different ways, not only by providing direct service through call outs in which we go to the scene, we assist first responders in working with families, providing support for them. We follow up those calls with individual contact with responders to support them. In addition, there are other services that we do to support our first responders. Cowlitz Chaplaincy, along with a group of spouses led by Anissa Kizamore out of COG, we've created our first structured peer support team directly for spouses of first responders in Cowlitz County. We commissioned the writing of a book for first responder families, in which we partnered with Dr. Stephanie Kahn out of Portland to write a manual for spouses and families dealing with stress. And that has been published. It's probably we think it's the first book of its kind in the United States for spouses. We are excited by that. We are excited by the fact that Cowlitz Chaplaincy has partnered with at least 3 different departments in the area to set up their own peer support teams in which chaplains are a part of their teams and support them. on a regular basis and work with their coordinators and leaders to make sure that we're providing emotional and psychological first aid to responders on a daily basis. Um, in addition to working with the peer teams and providing the spouses peer team, we also are involved in the community in a couple of different ways. One is that we coordinate with Walmart to provide a shop with first responder program for 3 of our agencies in the Longview area. We coordinate 3 of them. There are others going on, but each year we partner with our agencies to help anywhere from 70 to 100 kids. And that's a community thing that allows us to provide first responders the opportunity to mingle with children and let children have a positive interaction with our first responders. In addition, we also have a partnership with our school districts in which our chaplains are members of the Area SMART team, which is a reaction team of counselors and therapists and and chaplains who respond to schools when there are deaths of children's or staff members and so forth in school districts. Chaplains are a part of that team in our area. One of the things that we also are hoping to start, and having a new facility is also one of the ways that we can do that, is by establishing a Rest Stop program, which is a program initiated in Oregon through a group called Responder Life, in which churches, businesses, and groups provide secured locations that responders can go to take a wellness break. Those are usually secured rooms in either churches, businesses. In one case, we want to start one in our facility in which responders can come in and they're in a secure room, and there's a fridge, there's a chair, there's a computer, there's a way for them to relax in safety, even meet their family in safety, just to have a wellness break. We're also seeing a huge increase as our chaplains are able to also serve as gatekeepers for the responders. In 2022, we assisted and provided 21 counselor referrals to culturally competent licensed therapists in our region down toward Oregon. We don't just give them a name, but we help them make the contact. We help them get into a therapist. And we've had a lot of successful interventions for our responders. And our goal is to keep them healthy. In addition, we've seen an increase of community requests for our CISM services, providing critical incident stress management services for people going through crisis events. We've had several requests each year from businesses in the area, including West Rock, Weather Guard, Foster Farms, J.H. Kelly, many different groups that have had deaths in their facilities, and they've asked the chaplains to come in and provide support to their individuals, their employees. So those are just actually a couple of the things that we do. And because I'm losing my voice, I'm going to benefit you by stopping and not going on, although I would love to talk even more about more of the services that we are able to do. At this time, I want to introduce our Sheriff, Brad Thurman, who will also share.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As others have said, the chaplaincy has served our community for 40 years. It originated, as I said, with the sheriff serving just sheriff's deputies, was expanded to all first responders, law enforcement, fire, search and rescue, EMS, provide a vital service. not only on an individual basis to the first responders and their families, but also to organizations as a whole. As mentioned, our sheriff's office and law enforcement in Cowlitz County when we lost Justin DeRozier. Then they also served District 2 with untimely suicide of one of their firefighters. And here about a month ago, a fire department up in Cougar had an untimely death of one of their firefighters. It really impacted that close-knit community, not only the fire department, but the whole Cougar community as a whole. The chaplaincy was very much involved in all of those, serving them. Beyond that, their role has expanded to serving the community as a whole, people in crisis. I'm sure most, if not all, those calls they went on last year involved a death of someone, and they're a vital component there in those moments of crisis to guide them through those first few days and help them see their way through the crisis and struggle that people are facing at those times. That's a kind of a gap that really government can't fill in those types of situations. It's great to have those people, the chaplaincy there to serve those people that maybe don't have a faith community or support structure to help them out. I guess, how does this translate into needing a new building or expanding their services or what they can do? Currently, they have a very small office the city of Longview's allowed them to use for a number of years. It's given them a very good rate on the rent. It's cheap, but it's basically a small reception area and 2 small offices. And they share the space. Another room is dedicated to the American Medical Response Ambulance Service, occupies the same space. What this building would allow them to do would be to have a more permanent home, be able to have expand their services, have a meeting place for their joint chaplain meetings that they have. By my count, I know they have 2 full-time chaplains, and by the best count I have is probably 8 volunteer chaplains that are serving or in training right now. So it's vital for them to have a space to work, to train, and prepare themselves for service to the community, and also to have spaces for them to serve and counsel members of the community as well as our first responders. So I'd encourage, if there's anything that you can do as commissioners, I know individually, I know you gentlemen have supported the chaplains, as do I, but sometimes you need a little additional help. And if there's anything you can do to make that happen, I think it'd be very much appreciated by us and the community. So having said that, I'll turn things over to Kevin Rentner. He's a local supervisor with the State Department of Corrections and one of our board members.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the sheriff noted, I'm Kevin Rentner. I'm a community corrections supervisor with the Washington State Department of Corrections. I've been with the department for 20 years and served in the Longview field office of the department that whole time. I've supervised from 8 to 14 community corrections supervisors, or what we'd otherwise know as parole officers. And our officers are out in the community, and we supervise the worst of the worst, except for those that they never let out of prison. So I am with a state agency. However, we have a community responsibility. We have officers that work in the Woodland Police Department, Kelso Police Department, Longview Police Department, and Castle Rock Police Department. We partner with the social services and treatment providers in the community, and with the families of those that we supervise. In 2007, I was appointed in writing by the Secretary of the Department to represent the department on the county's Law and Justice Council. In that capacity, I've gotten to know Commissioners Weber, Commissioners Mortensen very well as many of their predecessors going back to George Rader. For the last 4 years, I've been on the board of directors. Before that, there had been a corrections representative, Marin Fox Height, who you know well. And when she resigned, they looked for someone in the corrections field to replace her. And I was recruited and been very happy to serve that role. So why would a state agency need the services? First, as I noted, we are in the community. The Washington Department of Corrections has its own chaplains, but those are prison chaplains. And frankly, their focus is on prison inmates. I've never met any of them. I don't know how to get in touch with any of them. We do have staff psychologists, and we do have a CISM team, critical incident and stress management, but they're all out of Olympia. They cannot respond in 15 minutes. If they respond in 2 to 3 days to a crisis, that's success. By contrast, the Cowlitz County Chaplaincy has been here for my department. we've had 4 different times when I, as a supervisor, have had to call upon their services. First, we went through some layoffs in 2009, 2010. And as anyone who's been with an organization that's gone through those cuts, it's a very stressful thing. We had officers who'd only ever worked in DOC, and now they're looking at not having an income to support their families. When the chaplains came in and talked with them and gave them hope and were available to them. Then we had an officer involved shooting, and there was nobody was actually shot, killed, injured, but the shooting happened. And it's not like TV. If there's a shooting, you can't believe the stress that places on a law enforcement organization. We had an internal and an external investigations. For about 6 months, the operations in my unit was totally disrupted. But we had the chaplains come and talk with people and provide privileged communications, which is needed in a time of shooting, because when people are under stress, sometimes they say things that they might regret later and may not be accurate. So having just a voice, an opportunity to talk with someone in a privileged manner was certainly worthwhile. Then we went through a period, we lost a community corrections supervisor, Eric Morgan. Eric was like a brother to me. He and I started with the department together and worked very closely. In my almost 45 years of public service, I've worked with no one closer for that long a period of time. He got an illness and passed away. And at that same time, we went through a major reorganization because of the Blake decision, which I presume you've heard about, that decimated our caseload. So we went from 3 units to 2. So we're dealing with a reorganization, a loss of a beloved supervisor, and then I moved to a different position at that same time. So that impact on our 30 staff that we have at the field office was immense. And think about that, the impact on their families was immense. On a personal level, it was devastating to me. In a 12-month, just over a 12-month period of time, I lost both my parents, a guy that I considered to be a brother, and we lost a fugitive apprehension specialist, Philly Matua, to a suicide, all in that same time frame. I personally had to call upon the chaplains to come and talk with me on 4 or 5 occasions to help me get through it and to help me continue to be a good leader to my unit. That's the type of service they provide. And again, that's to first responders, but the tertiary effects. We have 30 staff. We have 18 staff over at the Longview Work Release Facility, plus 60 inmates. And all those staff have families, and all those staff are connected to others in the community. So the exponential effects of, in my case, making my working circumstances better and keeping my head straight during a time of great stress, I cannot thank them enough. They've certainly lightened the burden, as Clay said earlier, reduced the emotional load. So again, they provided a valuable service to the first responders and to their families and the community. And even though I'm a state agency that I represent, I am deeply, deeply personally and professionally indebted to the work of the chaplaincy. And when they asked me to be a member of their board, I was very excited because they'd already done such great things for the Washington Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name's Daryl Herrera, and I've had the privilege to be involved with chaplains about 30 and a half years because I've been a member of Cowlitz 2 Fire for about 30 and a half years. And in a variety of ways, you make those relationships, and the chaplains help us help people. We call them for the families when we're out there and there's a crisis. We talk to them ourselves. We refer each other to them. And of course, all the other services too, EAP and those things. Chaplains just fit in the mix of things we want to have for people. I have had the privilege of being on the chaplains board for 17 years, representing Cowlitz 2, and more recently I became a volunteer chaplain. So in order to continue the work of loving and serving people in a new capacity. So it's such a privilege. And, just a new, bigger, better location would be such a gift to all of the people that the chaplains serve and the chaplains. And it would expand that footprint in ways we can think about now, but probably also in ways we can't really see right now and into the future. So your support would be greatly appreciated. And thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Chris Troyer. I'm a paramedic with Cowlitz 2 Fire. One thing we've all heard today is how well the chaplaincy program does for us as first responders. The thing they haven't really relayed to you is how well they do when it's your family or my friend or my family that has just had a major life event and they've lost someone. And I see Chaplain Doug all the time on people's worst days. And it's at all times of day, all times of night, rain or snow, they show up. And if they have a proper resting place of their own, it would be very beneficial versus their little office they have right now or sleeping in someone's tiny bedroom. It's just, they deal with a lot of stress and you can't even imagine every day, all the time. I just wanted to say, I didn't think they portrayed that well to you guys. Thank you.
I'd like to personally thank everybody that was here today and shared your personal stories, as well as Chief Huda, who had to step out. But just to close out this wonderful opportunity, this building will change the lives of our chaplains, our staff, our volunteers, and making the future brighter for everyone in this community. 110,000 people in our county are served by our services. We just ask that you consider to purchase this building, assist us in our operational support, as well as just praying for us every day that we came home safe as well, so we can serve all first responders in this community. So thank you very much, and we are open to questions.
We have, and maybe you can kind of clarify for me, what I'm seeing is actually two different requests. One is a building and one is operations. What mechanisms do we have in place? The operations where it covers stuff. We do that state contract and it covers a lot of different stuff. I don't know if it figures into something like that, or I don't know where the sources are.
Yeah, so that's one thing that Clay and I have talked a little bit about, looking into what options there are for funding that might be a good fit for some of the work they're doing. They are certainly providing some mental health support and services. And so the mental health tax could be something we could look at. I was also looking at the opioid settlement money a little bit. It's sort of, that funding is specific to opioid related events or response, but it does specifically call out wellness for first responders. So there's kind of a couple things that we might be able to look at a little more closely. I know Commissioner Weber had mentioned before the community development block grant specifically in terms of the building, and that's something we can continue to look at. That opportunity doesn't come open again until February or March with an award, not until, July or August or something like that. So it's a little bit down the road. there's also, we have that entitlement, non-entitlement issue with CDBG where the county's portion is dedicated to outside of the city of Longview. And so that's another component to look at with that funding as well. So I don't have a good answer to your question right now, just that learning more about what they're doing, their efforts, and looking at what we might have.
Yeah.
And we might need to get legal involved a little bit to take a look at what might be a fit for something like this.
Yeah, I don't, I'll address two things here. I don't have heartburn with a building really. When I came back in town in the early nineties, I think they had a little office down. I mean, I've seen them jump around. So
Mhm.
I don't, I get the building thing. To me, and this may be not a great analogy, but it's almost like a piece of equipment for them to work.
Mhm.
It's like the road department getting a dump truck so they can go out do something. It's an asset that they utilize so they can do their work. So I don't have a whole lot of heartburn with that. When you talk about operational money, you've heard me before. I don't like getting into running,
Mhm.
funding people's operation. I feel like they need to fund it themselves. The other thing I always say about that, be careful about taking money from Big Brother, because then Big Brother is going to tell you how to run your operation. So you have to be very, very careful about it. I had that same warning to Habitat. I like the way they operate, but if they take money from government, then they're going to expect that you're going to run a certain way as to how they want you to run. And I'm not,
Mhm.
and I would be saddened that if you had to change some of your operation just to chase money. I don't want you to chase money. I want you to chase what you're chasing. And so I throw out some caution in that. And that's one of the reasons I try to stay out of operations, especially for organizations that I have a lot of respect for and think they do the right thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I could, Commissioner, the reason why I had suggested the operational support is because our funding only comes from individuals and businesses and not federal, state, county, or city. We get about 165,000 from our individual donors and approximately 80,000 from fundraising. Because of the economy, we are seeing that our donations are lowering from individuals. And so that kind of put fear in me that if we lose that, then what do we do? And so that is
Yeah.
where that operational support came
Yeah.
in.
And I get that. And I'm not telling you not to chase it. I'm just telling you, don't change your foundation just to chase it.
That's right.
That's basically what I'm saying. And I try to guard against.
Thank you.
Well, first I would ask you, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I would hope you wouldn't deduce or infer anything one way or the other from my questions. I'm just trying to do a little fact finding, and I'm really wanting you to think about things like the chairman just mentioned there. A thing I liked about the chaplaincy early on was that it was really driven by volunteers. And the fact that you don't take government funds and all that spoke to me. When I think about a building there, one of the thoughts that comes to mind is what has changed. And because you've got pretty big organizations, I think it was mentioned somewhere in my notes, I'll probably find a few of the companies. I can remember J.H. Kelly and West Rock. I would think it'd be relatively easy for them to form a little LLC, buy the building and lease it out. And that takes us out of a bind of trying to figure out which pot of money we would have to deal with. And it takes us out of the bind of saying, this effort is more important than this other effort. Basically, the pleas you ask we hear on a daily basis. Everybody has excellent ideas on how to spend the money. So that's kind of one form of background. Another is when I asked what things have changed, I noticed one person gave testimony and used the term expand of the footprint. And it reminds me of Ronald Reagan's statement that the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. Well, how do you define a government program? I think there are many ways you could define it. One way is a set of people pays for a service that other people get for free. And that's what we have here. We've got a lot of support, but maybe we don't have enough support. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here on that. And then I'll jump around a little bit. When you say expand the footprint, what crosses my mind is what is it that causes us to think we have a demand? So let me see if I can back this up. We began in 1983, and there is fairly obvious that there were things you could do. As time has gone on, many agencies have figured out that there's lots of things we could do. But we end up with a chicken and egg problem. As we pour resources into volunteer efforts, and I'm using volunteers a very loose term here, the problems seem to exacerbate. You give someone a free lunch and there's always somebody else who wants a free lunch too. So you see there's a demand for free. And it's always incumbent upon each of us, and it's a question, I trust the chaplaincy, but they really have to ask themselves, where are we going from here? Are we going to be providing good things or providing facilitation for bad things with excellent intents? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it's something that's a deep question. I was going to ask, is there an essence that you can tell me is the chaplaincy that is different than the multitude of welfare agencies we have around the county? And if anybody wants, in the chaplaincy wants to volunteer and do so in 1 or 2 sentences, I would like that. I'll prejudice it by telling you what I think and how I might answer that, but that's an invitation for you to challenge me on that, which is, with OPMA, I can't talk to him, even though it doesn't prevent any malfeasance or misfeasance from happening. It just prevents us from discussing in a safe environment what's up and down. Neither he nor I can be swayed by financial payoffs or any of that other crap that the OPMA is supposed to prevent. But I'm assuming that the chaplaincy is a safe place where we can go and just discuss things. And I'm assuming in there that it's got a privacy policy there. So if I tell something to Chaplain Doug, it stays there. And that's something we don't have anyplace else. In fact, well, except the churches in some way, I suppose, but in a non-denominational sense, I have no place to go and talk to people. So I think your essence is safe place to air your most difficult questions. And there aren't very many places around with that. Let's see, what else? Okay, on a very mechanical sense, I don't have an idea on some of the services, but I don't remember the cost of the building. maybe Calais, you can just say it's approximately,
Approximately 699,000
okay.
asking
okay.
price.
Yeah, and what was the other thing? Oh, what's your budget, your annual
Our
budget?
annual budget is 245,000
And that pays for?
for the use of the building from the city of Longview. And one of the reasons why we pushed ahead on this is the city of Longview increased our rent this year. And which even though it may not be a lot to others, it's a lot to us when we're relying on donations.
Just as a sidebar, I've been there a couple of times and it's pretty abysmal, but I don't want
We
to
do
insult
have a-
anybody from Longview.
Yeah, we do have a table and chair in our lobby, but when there's meetings or interviews, everyone has to leave.
Yeah. If the building is used as an expression of our appreciation for what the chaplaincy does, I don't have a problem. It's one of those things where we come out ahead regardless, but I also have the fiscal end of things and then I really don't want to create a monster. And I know that sounds preposterous, but I learned by some mistakes that if you have a situation that is predicated solely on the people, you want to think about how you're going about that. That's a corollary to my statement. If you give me a lousy organization with good people, I have something. If you give me an excellent organization with lousy people, I have nothing. And we have something here because of the people. So I don't want to destroy that in the same way that our chairman said he didn't wish to destroy it. What else did I note down? Okay, yeah, on the growth, I've been alarmed. So 250,000 approximately. And what is your projection for the future on that?
We have projected year over year the same amount, just due to the fact that there are people losing their jobs and we might be losing some donations, some from churches as well. So the ask was 245,000 is our annual, but maybe Paul Bricknell can share some numbers with you. Before Paul answers that, I will just say that you are not the first that we've asked for support. West Rock has been sold many times over. NORPAC has been a great sponsor of ours, but we have asked for other sources of funding as well as some businesses like Foster Farms with Jason and having some great meetings with them. So you definitely are not our first, but you, I feel, might be our best way to go.
Yeah,
To also,
let me go back to my question on the budget. How is that spent? It just in gross bins?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We have a overall budget, 245,000. And 180,000 is to salaries, and 60,000 is to our operating cost of our chaplaincy.
So if a chaplain, I notice they have a uniform and they have to drive to places, how are they reimbursed or not reimbursed?
Our reserves and our staff chaplains all receive uniforms that our chaplains pay for, not themselves, but the organization pays for. So we have a couple of vehicles that we keep up and maintain. We have the operations of just the day-to-day tasks of running an organization like the Cowles Chaplaincy, plus our rent. And
How much is your rent?
how much is the rent?
Yeah,
It's 500 a month.
500 a month?
Mhm.
You're overpaying. The jury will please strike that last remark, or we'll ignore that last remark.
It'll cost you some redaction fees.
Ah, yes, we just discussed redaction earlier. By the way, Kevin, it's nice to see you, and I think it's very meaningful that you pinpoint how the timeliness and availability is key. No. Would you mind if you stepped up to the microphone? Yes. Or, no, well, there's another microphone there too.
Thought I had the good Army command voice, you didn't need the microphone.
Except that the people
More
will
for Zoom
look at the
audience.
recording.
So by coincidence, the location of this building abuts against the Department of Corrections, which would provide improved security for both organizations. The building has had a number of tenants, both as private residences and as businesses. And some of those individuals and organizations have been rather shady and has provided some concern on the part of the DOC staff as to their security. And certainly with the chaplaincy, they'd like to know that they have 25 law enforcement officers right next door in the case of an emergency that and we would be very excited that when we do have the crises where we do have to have quick response from the chaplains to support staff, we could even just send somebody down the sidewalk, hey, go talk to the chaplain. They didn't mention that right now, the building they're in is just office space. This building provides everything they need. The living quarters for those on-call chaplains, plenty of room for training area, plenty of room for parking, and plenty of room for both individual offices for the chaplaincy as well as conference rooms. And the owner has done a remarkable job. I hadn't been in the building for like 4 or 5 years, and I couldn't believe that the remodeling that's in the inside. I can't think of a better building for them than what's there. And like I said, then it gets the value added of a little bit of extra security for their organization and mine.
Commissioner Mortensen, I'd like to address a couple of your questions that you'd asked. One of them was defined, they're expanding the footprint. So over the past 5 years, the need for chaplains in our services has gone up.
If I might stop you there, I hear that kind of stuff all the time. The need for a free service always grows, so that doesn't tell me anything.
So what I like to explain is what has changed. So we started tracking some metrics as far as what we're providing. So for example, we started tracking our counseling hours. So in 2020, we started and we were able to measure, we averaged about 25 hours a month where we were doing counseling for first responders. In 2020, in March of 2020, every first responder was a hero. And by the end of May 2020, police officers specifically were demonized. So not only were they carrying the stress of a pandemic, but they were also feeling the weight of people wanting to defund the police officers. And so moms and dads were having to field questions to why they were not, if their mom or dad was a police officer, why moms and dads who are police officers, why do people want them to lose their jobs? And so it added to the stress. By the end of 2020, August of 2020, we were doing 65 hours of counseling for first responders. So when you have cultural events start to take place, the ROs go up. So before 2020 or 2019, I'll back up because when Justin died, we were doing about 20 hours. And then after he died, it was about 35 hours a month. And then once George Floyd died in May of 2020, we went up to 45, up to 65 hours by the end of the summertime. And we've kind of averaged back out to approximately 35 hours a month to first responders. Now, the reason why we're looking to expand is because as we are growing our team, we have a picture that the ideal team is 3 full-time chaplains, along with another 10 reserve chaplains. And the way that the reserve chaplains play into this is that when our full-time chaplains, who on average are do 5 to 6 days of on-call chaplain, 24 hours a day, our reserve chaplains step in to do 1 or 2 24-hour shifts to give our full-time people a break, which leads to their own emotional and mental and spiritual health so that they don't burn out. When we have a full team, we are able to provide more department visits. When we're able to provide more department visits, which by the way, we provide about 75 to 85 department visits a month, we then can provide more availability for everyone who needs a counselor or a chaplain to talk to. Now, when Chaplain Doug, who's our only full-time chaplain, makes a department visit, he's going to connect with a certain demographic of individuals who work at Cal Institute Fire and Rescue. But when our other chaplains are able to show up, they're able to also maybe connect with the other portion of responders that don't connect with Chaplain Doug. And so when we have our bigger team, our dream team fully staffed, then we feel like we can actually continually care for every first responder so that, again, our goal is that they have long, healthy careers. So as we look for a place to do some of our counseling, one of the things that we run into currently is that we share space with AMR, meaning that we have our offices, but they have a break room in the back. And when they come in to take some time off from the van and sit down on the couch or use the restroom or the Wi-Fi, but we're also happen to be doing counseling in one of our offices, it makes it a little bit less confidential and pretty awkward to say the least. First responders are going to be hesitant if they do come by for counseling and they happen to see other paramedics there who are wondering, why am I here with the chaplains? So we're looking for a place where we can call home so that we can have more confidential office space for our chaplains and for our first responders. So the demand continues to expand, and we're hoping to be able to meet that and provide a place where we can have our secure offices on one side of the building, private counseling on another side of the building, and then upstairs, because of the access of this house, housing for our reserve chaplains who come in from different parts of the county, as far as Toledo, Woodland, even up near Cougar. And so when our reserve chaplains come in, we want them to be available. So being available within 15 minutes is not possible when you live in Amboy or South Woodland or up in Toledo area. So that's why we're looking for a place where we could provide housing, office space, training center. One of our goals that we have, commissioners, is to provide a regional training center. We have 2 chaplains, Chaplain Doug Fields and Mario Gambaro, who have 10+ years and the credentialing now, who would be considered master chaplains within our credentialing to provide regional training. And our goal is to become a chaplain regional training center for the Pacific Northwest. We're in a really unique spot with a great group of individuals who are skilled plus the experience to become trainers of other chaplains. And so we're looking for a place. The building that we're looking at has got great training space for us. So that's why it's one of these investments that we look like this is a perfect fit for where we are and where we're going to be going.
Mr. Chairman, how frank do you want me to be? You give me pause on the negative side. I made it a point that I didn't really like the growth to always find more services to do, because that's something we see all the time. You can't start a little program and have somebody solve the problem and cap it. And when I first came to the county, I got to know the chaplaincy, and I've been a supporter. and out of my pocket, and I have seen it grow and become more institutionalized in a way where they had to hire a fundraiser and they have to hire a manager. I hearken back to the Tom Hahn days, and I have misgivings there. And when you start saying a regional training center, I'm saying the reason I supported this was because it was local, taking care of local people. And you've confirmed a fear that I have that we will expand to the point where we become, well, Gina, how many pages do we have of welfare systems in the county? It's fair number. Half a dozen, right?
You're talking about our the resource list. There's,
Yeah.
yeah, there's quite a few pages of resources.
Yeah. And everybody always starts with their own little niche or something like that. And I thought, being frank, you have a great niche. And you're not staying in your lane. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to support the thing. I just want you to think about what it is you're doing and how you started out and why you were very successful. And as you depart and you go like these other organizations, they find problems everywhere. In fact, who was it? Was it Groucho Marx that said you can, it would take me a moment to find his aphorism, but anyhow, I'll stop there. I don't know if I can be much franker.
Commissioner Morrison brings up some great points, and I have those type of concerns also. I've seen that happen. I've seen you open a sliver of the door and then pretty soon everything you didn't expect happens. But I'll take it. I have a little bit, my concern on growth is a little bit different. One of the questions he posed, and I think it's totally legitimate, is how are we different than all the other organizations that do this type of stuff? I think what makes you different is you teach from the book. And to me, that's the instruction manual. And that's just my own personal thing. That's all you need to know is how to live your life is the book. And as you grow, my concerns would be that you start chasing money, you chase programs, you forget about the book. And that's where my concern would be. So if the book always stayed your instruction manual, then I hope you reach everybody in the county. But it's a tough thing to do at times. And so I have concerns with growth too, but it's more along those lines. I think you're different than the others because that's your base, that's your foundation, that's what drives you. I don't want to see you lose that. But I also think I don't think we have a whole lot of heartburn on helping them with a place. I don't know the mechanics of it or quite how to do that, but I think there's some place in there where I don't want to speak out of turn, but because Commissioner Weber isn't here, although I think he supports it, if we found a way to support an operational base for him, I think for the most part, we're pretty much on board.
One of the things that can help is, well, help. I've got more questions, but we have a gentleman or two who want to speak.
I thought since Commissioner Mortensen brought up my era, I would add a few words. Yeah, I started with chaplaincy in 2012 and I became the director in 2014. I retired from full-time work in 2018. Since that time, over the last 5 years, I've continued to serve as a volunteer chaplain. I think all of my chaplains would agree that we've had this conversation, and it kind of goes to your question about what is different about us. I have many people towards the end of a crisis event. By this time, the coroner has left with the body. We are continuing to talk to the family. And people will turn to me and they'll say, "You have absolutely the worst job in the world." And I'll look at them and say, "Yes, and I do this as a volunteer." And then they really start to look at me funny. But I think the essence of the chaplaincy continues today. And that is the mission to our first responders and the community and people who are going through crisis. I cannot think, I've been sitting there today thinking, is there another social services organization in the county that deals with in-time crisis intervention of death situations in the county? That's us. That's only us. And that continues to be the essence of what we do. I liked that is our lane, and we stay in that lane 99% of the time. And it's why I continue to wear this uniform, to be in that place. And so I really appreciate what you both said about chasing money. Because I would not like to see the chaplaincy ever get to a point where a government agency says, because you have these dollars, you will hire this person or that person, and you will do things this way or that way. That'll probably be my last day in this uniform. And so I want to protect that we have the opportunity to do what we do the way we do it, because we are the best at it in the way that we do it. So thank you.
My name's Chaplain Dawn. I've been a chaplain, reserve chaplain for 5.5
Could you come
years.
closer?
Sorry, I've got a soft voice. My name's Chaplain Dawn. I've been a reserve for nearly 5.5 years. You asked what's different. The first responder world and the community is like two separate worlds. In the community, you live your life, you do what you do, you don't see the darkness. In the first responder world, we step behind that curtain. We see the worst of humanity. They see the darkest of the darkness. Now they then walk out into the community to be with their family, to be with their friends. Can they share that? No. You ask the first responder, and you hear this said so many times, what's the worst one you've ever been to? And watch their face. What's the worst call you've ever been to? And they literally, you cannot share that with the community or anybody outside of the first responder world, because to be honest, you don't want to know. But we're there for that. We're there. We walk with them behind that curtain. We walk on scene. We see what they see. We smell what they smell. We touch what they touch. And when the community is involved in that behind the scene, when it happens to them, we're there with them. We're holding their hands. We're wiping the tears. We don't care what culture you come from. We don't care what faith you are. We don't care if you have no faith. We're there for you in that moment of your worst moment. And we're there for our first responders to walk with them in that moment. So if they want to talk, they can talk with us, because we have been there. We've walked behind that curtain. We know what it's like. The rest of the world doesn't. It lives almost like in, it's like a make-believe world, because you don't know what it's like behind the curtain and how dark it is. And we all need our first responders. We need the police, we need the fire, we need EMS. If they were removed, what society would we have? But they are exposed to so much now. So much out there has changed in the decades. What happened decades ago is far different to now. You've seen the drugs on the street. You've seen the crime on the street. They are exposed to that every day. And who do they talk to? Because if you can't talk to your family because you don't want to scare them, you don't want to tell your wife, I was that near to death. So when they ask, you go, oh, it's okay. It's just been one of those days. I'm married to a first responder. My husband's also a chaplain, but he was a firefighter. And I can tell you, when they walk out that door, your heart is in your throat as a spouse. Are they coming home? And you don't ask the questions because you don't want that. They don't want to bring that home. When they're home, they're home. So that's what we're there for. We're there to help them get to the end of their careers as healthy as how they started. So when they retire and they're finally with their family, they're not this wreck of a person. They actually come to the end of their careers and they can have a great life. And we want them on the scenes with you guys healthy. And we want you guys, when we turn up on scene and you're having your worst day, we want you to know you've got someone there for you who's going to look after you and whose whole focus is on you to help you through that worst day. And I always say, if I can just make your day just a tiny bit better on that worst day, then I've done what I was meant to do. I just wanted to say that.
So what's on your mind, Rick, for the next step?
I think I need some direction from Gina to tell us if we wanted to help them with a building, how are we going to do that?
Let me, do you mind
No. Yeah.
just chatting? Again, we can't get to talk except in the public eye as if we were going to, anyhow. We own the Janus House. I call it the Janus House, and we lease it to them for $1 a year or something like that. Yeah,
There's actually I think there's 2 houses.
yeah,
down
there are 2 houses.
So it'd be something similar to that.
Yeah, but my point would be, my first question is not how do we get the money, but do we feel comfortable that that is a good way to spend the money for the taxpayer? And I suspect you and I lean the same way, which is of all the programs we see, there's some we automatically know are more damaging than helpful. And how do we, but by bureaucracy, we end up funding them even though we know it's not a good thing. This, I'm certain, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, I can quibble with you whether they need a building like that or not, but
Yeah.
let's take their word for it is sort of what I'm projecting. That sound all right to you?
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, so it'd be all right for you to cough up 699,000. Well, you can chew them down. So that'd be all right with you?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be all right with me.
Because and this is just a wild out of the blue, because the Expo Center, we have that whole public facilities district. Would it even fit into that? I mean, because that's kind of a whole unit there. It's all.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's the kind of thing where I would say, it sounds like we're in agreement, so we would tell staff, go figure it out,
Tell us how to do this.
how we're gonna get this
Yeah.
done.
And if we're in agreement on this, I know Commissioner Weber is.
He would
also.
not object, I'm certain.
Yeah. So is that fairly clear?
But I
Give you
would
something to do. Yeah.
caution the chaplaincy is, we don't necessarily know what the legal ramifications end up being, and we could get slapped on the hand any number of times, and so this isn't a guarantee other than a guarantee of intent. Agreed?
Yeah.
Commissioners, I was on the City of Longview Planning Commission for many years. I've just recently stepped down because I've been elected their new city councilwoman. It is zoned for what we're requesting.
Oh. That's one box checked, yeah.
Yeah.
If it were up to me to count box checks or something like that, I'm terrible. I don't care. Does it make sense? That's what I ask.
Yeah, so, and what you've discussed makes sense to me. I'm not sure exactly, I'm involved in some funding. There might also be other funding, but if there is, a direction from the board to say, let's look into this and figure out what options we have and how that might work. I have kind of the same questions about, would we buy it and then lease it? Would we just turn the money over and they would buy it? Kind of those types of questions. So we're happy
Yeah.
to try to.
That's why Doug and David
Yeah.
are your best friends.
Yes.
Yeah. On
Yeah.
that particular property, just because of where it all sits,
Mhm.
I'd probably keep it as a county asset because I don't know, maybe 50 years they're still there. I don't know that, but if not, if they're doing other things, then I think that's an area that for other development can go and be productive for the county, that whole,
Yeah,
if it was, yeah.
I agree. I don't have a problem with, I think the county, if the county is gonna do something, it's really got to buy the building. And then the lease there, one of the things I learned when I came on board were some of the contracts just made me cry. They were written rather badly, and I will always be cautious on behalf of the county. So I'd want good clauses in there that say if the chaplaincy goes and has their wild orgies like we've heard about, that we can just evict them. Well, I'm only kidding, of course. No, don't get any ideas.
Yeah.
One of the things, if I could add, in this tenure with the Cowlitz chaplaincy, we have partnered quite strongly with businesses like NORPAC and West Rock. We do hope to and will have some great volunteers to take that building on as a project for, let's say, the United Way Day of Caring. We could do some work. We can also utilize our Red Canoe employees that have offered 8 hours apiece through the year to help. So we are looking at, if you do purchase, and we feel it might be best for you to retain that building as well, but we are looking at possible matching funds for a potential grant down the road as we continue to, or start to purchase grants. So we don't have to rely on government, more local foundation grants like the Kirshner and Evans Foundation grant. So we are looking for the community to help us with these fixtures and modifications and beautification curbside appeal projects to contribute to the building as well.
Don't ever let that go. Make sure, because that's the way you measure if you're being successful, is will somebody pony up. Kelly, you still have that Word document I gave you that's got all the quotations in it?
Probably buried in my email.
Oh, okay. I
Sorry.
take it that's I'm not going to be able to find it in time.
Yeah, sorry.
So you should say, Arn, you ought to be able to find it yourself.
So we're willing to walk that path until, as Commissioner Mortensen points out, somebody comes up and says, no, you can't go here for whatever reason. I don't know that there would be anything there, but that can happen, but
One of the things we have to protect against is whatever we do for you, there'll be a line of 45 agencies that want the same. And that's about $12 million that we don't have to spend that way.
Well, and that's one of the things, and I don't want to speak for the commissioner, but I think when he asks what makes you different, we want to be able to say, well, we did this because this is what they do that nobody else provides. And I think that's a lot where those type of questions come from is we ourselves need some of that information and ammo.
Yeah, actually, along those lines, if Paul could, you say you collect a lot of data. I would really like to see a chart of the last 5 years of number of chaplains and the number of hours spent. And I don't really, if you want to break down the hours of chaplaincy between this kind of hour and that kind of hour, I don't know. I'd really like an overall picture. In my simplistic mind, you can get boggled down by the trees and not see the forest. And I just want to see the forest there, partly for me, but partly for you, because I gave some strong admonitions, and I'm not sure whether I'm stepping out of my lane or something like that, just letting you know the way somebody else views it.
Yeah, so your request is just some overall metrics for the past 5 years? Is that
Metrics is almost too strong a word, because that means that there is something against which I'm trying to establish a decision on. And I'm just simply collect the data. I want all the data you have if possible, but don't micromanage the data and don't sell us too short. A lot of people want us to do something, so they'll provide us this data, but not this data, because that might change our minds. And that's kind of why I started out with, don't assume too much from my questions. We really want to know what's on the table.
So being involved in nonprofits, have I been involved with over the years? Secretary, used to be Secretary Sneed's office in Olympia, had a value per hour of volunteerism. And so when I was at United Way, we tracked all of the volunteer hours that the community gave, which could also leverage additional funding for matching funds based on volunteer labor as well as service and equipment. And so we have been doing a pretty good job of tracking how many volunteers were at our dinner, National Night Out, and those things. And we could probably come up with a pretty good value if that's what you're looking for. I don't know if you're wanting exactly that or just a good guesstimate.
I don't know. Do you want me to be frank again? Translating volunteer hours into dollars doesn't sway me. Volunteer hours are volunteer hours. I'm not going to put a dollar sign on what Chaplain Doug does. I'm going to be very socialist here and just say everyone's hours count. You're part of an organization, and let's not get into too much of that. And then remember the admonition about if you go for government funding, stuff like that, you want to be very, very careful. I am alarmed at what I see here. It doesn't mean that I can't rely on your past history, but realize that every organization that had a good start typically, I say, frequently ends up in not doing the right thing because they're absorbed, they're self-absorbed. We got to grow. We got to teach other people how to be good chaplains. Well, your job is here.
Yeah, and I agree. So when one of our goals for local training is simply to train our local churches in communicating during crisis. We have, I've personally been a pastor for 20 years, and I have not been on a maybe one crisis call as a pastor. I know that I've talked to our other pastors And that is one of the most intense times as a pastor, learning how to communicate during that moment. You don't really get that training in seminary. And fortunately, our chaplains, one of our goals is to assist our local pastors and leaders to learn how to communicate during their crisis. So when I say regionally, to be honest, we're starting here. We're starting with our local individual congregations just to help them out. And so,
Yeah, you are alarming me, Paul, but I'll leave it at that. I mean, those are all the
All
key
right.
words that I hear time and again and end up.
well, I'll just leave it at that then.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, so, I can't say, but I have just nothing but admiration for what you guys are doing. Personally, I'm a citizen. I've been coming to these meetings for a couple of years now, all kinds of them. If only I could tell you how the budgets just went and how much everybody struggled to cut the budget. And I want to reiterate the warning that these guys are trying to get from you. And if you don't hear anything else today, you should hear this. You guys get involved with the government is going to mess you up. It will. I guarantee it. I've seen it already. And I heard one of you guys say, well, that'd be the last day in office. Well, or that he would just leave. Well, it's like, you bring the government into this. You come asking for the government, you're going to get all of the government. That's a direct quote, I believe, from Rick Dahl. You don't want that. I promise you, you don't want that. On the other hand, too, I want you to really consider this part. This money, this isn't these guys. This is guys like me. I'm poor. And you guys want money, and I'm in absolute admiration of what you're doing. But you got to realize that there's so many people out here that are on a thin line, and this money's going to come out of their pocket. And it's not that you guys don't provide the service or are worth it and all that. I don't mean it that way, but really consider what you're asking, because it's pretty huge. We just had 3 weeks of argument to get 400,000 lowered in the budget. And I'm sorry to say, but this is a pretty big amount of money. So please consider the main thing is government will mess you up. I promise they will. I've seen it happen already. Every time. Every time government gets in a social program, the social program goes away. You guys are unique because you're independent of that. Really, really consider that you're going to give that up.
I don't see any hands up.
No? So you've got direction on the building. I think on the other, I'm not sure that's anything we can make up here today. We've given cautions on what that may mean. But really, you're better served to know if there's even anything out there that they could apply for and do. And then any of that type of request then would come back to us.
For the operational costs.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yes, so it sounds like we're sort of on the same page. We can look at what we have available, how it ties with what they're looking for, and come back and have some more discussion on what we've found out. I'll probably reach out to legal and get some feedback from them as well in terms of the funding and the use and that piece, and looking at what we have available.
Yeah, one of the things that if we want to build something and it would cost us $100, it'll cost you half that to somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3 of it, what it cost us. So I would not want you to come back and say, we want to do remodeling inside here and it's only going to cost you $350,000. And I'm counting on you taking care of that yourselves somehow. And if you get money from us for that, you're going to have to bear the cost that we basically bear. Are there any time sensitivities for you on this?
The house was off the market for us. They've now put it back on the market or on the market 2 months ago. I just heard from the owner this morning that they've removed the sign and took it off market until the decision is made, whether we are able to get the home or not. So in regards to working, of course, we would love to get in and get established and start anew in a new facility. We would hope that a decision could be made respectfully before they have to put it back on the market.
I don't know when they're putting
Pressure.
it back on the market.
No pressure.
Yeah. Well, I don't think, I think Gina, my experience with Gina, she's pretty efficient at this stuff and will try and get answers to us fairly quick. So hopefully the seller, if they're paying attention, or you can have them, show them this, that we're willing to walk that path. We just gotta.
Wonderful.
Figure it out.
And they actually were going to be here today, but they couldn't make it. But I guesstimated to them probably March, early next year. And if in fact they see that this is moving forward, it's just taking time, they're willing to give us the key to get moved in as soon as possible.
Yeah, if you do that, it'll be on you. Okay.
Anything else? Hopefully this was worthwhile to you and we come away with some progress here. And we always appreciate you coming in and participating. It's not always an easy thing to do. And it's difficult for us because as Commissioner points out, this is the only time we can sit and talk. And so you hear us air out things amongst ourselves up here that normally in private enterprise you'd do back here and then come out. Well, we end up doing it out here and it's not always smooth and easy, but we always appreciate your time.
Well, we knew we were going to be hit with some questions, which that's the way it should be. We want this to be very transparent and clear, and we want to thank you. Our blessings today are where we're at, and that you both appreciate us and have approved for Gina to move forward to look at funding and legal, and that's what we wanted. And I'd like to thank all of you for your time, as well as Paul Bricknell, Chaplain Doug, and all of the chaplains and first responders that came here today and showing their support.
Perfect. Any
Thank you,
other
Commissioners.
comments, any other miscellaneous before we adjourn this thing?
I would just reciprocate our appreciation for what you do. The chaplaincy is a labor of love is evident, and that goes a long way in anybody's book,
I may have,
especially the good.
I may
book.
have one of you come over on certain Tuesdays.
Okay. At 9 a.m.
Well, after 9 a.m. Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.
Oh, did you find that? Could you find a Groucho Marx one? And do you have a few moments after this? Okay. Oh, don't worry about it. Everybody's already discombobulated.
Okay, we will adjourn.